This is an ABC News special report.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Candace Gibson at ABC News headquarters in New York City.
And I'm Lauren Lister.
And we're interrupting the programming right now with this breaking news that is coming in literally right now from Belgium, Brussels, where the international airport there in Brussels has been shaken by at least 2 explosions. Reports say one of the blasts took place near the American Airlines check-in desk. And authorities said that there was 1 dead, at least right now, and several wounded.
Smoke can be seen rising from one of the terminals, and we have ABC's own Alex Marquardt, who is there or on the way there to the airport, on the phone. Alex, can you tell us the latest of what we know right now?
Good morning, Candace and Lauren. Absolutely. The explosion's taking place at Zaventem Airport, as you noted. That's the main international airport here in Brussels. It's what the airport spokeswoman is calling a double explosion, one right after the next, around 8 o'clock in the morning. Of course, that's peak travel time. People traveling all over the world. We understand that flights into Brussels have been diverted away from Brussels Airport, that flights out of Brussels have been canceled. Witnesses are still in the process of being evacuated from the departures hall where that took place. There were thousands of people taking flights this morning, leaving from that departures hall. The airport spokeswoman has said that there were wounded. They have not put a number on that wounded. And the federal police here have confirmed that at least 1 person has been killed. There are reports of a higher death toll, but thus far, nothing more is confirmed. Now, we're on our way to the airport right now. We understand that the highways heading there, this is about 10 miles outside of Brussels, have been blocked. So the authorities have set up a perimeter around the airport. Obviously, there's police on the scene. We know that the fire services have also been evacuated. The photos that we've seen coming from the airport show dark plumes of smoke rising from that terminals hall. So right now, it's unclear exactly what happened in terms of motive, cause of these explosions, but it obviously comes at an extremely sensitive time, just a few days after the 8th Paris attacker, Salah Abdeslam, the only surviving member of that terrorist group that carried out the Paris attacks, was arrested. And we spoke yesterday with someone from the Interior Ministry, which runs security here in Brussels, and the spokesman was telling us that the fear now is that arrest could trigger more attacks. She said that either more attacks could take place or people would go to ground and wait for the pressure to ease up. So, of course, right now, the immediate fear is that this is a terrorist attack.
And Alex, as you were talking, we were actually looking at some really gripping images coming on screen of the terminal. You can see many blown out windows, and you also saw something fascinating. You saw hundreds of passengers, I would say, out there on the tarmac of that airport right now. Obviously, those folks appear to not be injured, but it is an interesting scene to see them out there. I'm told the airport has been evacuated, and all the flights have, so far, no flights are going in or out of the Brussels airport. And Alex, I know you've been in Brussels for the last few days at least. What do you know of this airport? I imagine it's fairly popular because this is a capital for the EU and for NATO.
Absolutely. This is a very important European capital. That's absolutely right. This is where the main European Union offices are, as well as NATO. And, of course, every major embassy is also here. This is also a country that has been on high alert for quite some time, especially since those attacks in Paris in November, where a number of the people came from Brussels, a number of the attackers from this neighborhood of Molenbeek. Now, Belgium, as a country, has sent more fighters per capita to join ISIS. There are around 5,000 to 6,000 European jihadists fighting for ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Around 1,000 of them are Belgians. And so the great fear is obviously not only could some of those fighters then come home to carry out attacks, but also that they could radicalize people who are already living here. Someone like Salah Abdeslam, who is now in police custody, being held in the maximum security wing of a Belgian prison. He never went to fight in Iraq and Syria, but of course he was radicalized enough to become a key member of that ISIS team that carried out the attack. So this is no small European airport that we're talking about this morning. This is a major international airport that services is, as you say, not just an important country in Europe, but dignitaries and officials who are traveling all over the world. This is a prime target for anyone who wants to disrupt Europe. And, of course, European officials have been warning for quite some time, especially since November, that more attacks are coming. They said it was not a question of if, but a question of when.
You know, Alex, given that, I'm curious, in the U.S., we're so used to the stepped-up security at airports with TSA and the measures that were put into place after 9/11. What is it like there? You mentioned that the city is on high alert. Have security measures been stepped up at the airport? Have there been responses to the attacks that we've seen in Europe in the form of security and what passengers go through when they get to the airport?
The terror alert is still at 3, and that's the second highest. It has not yet been raised to. So this is the 3.
We're having a little breakup with your phone line there. We should point out that we're talking right now with ABC international correspondent Alex Morcourt, who's on his way to the Brussels airport right now from downtown Brussels. That's roughly about 6 miles northeast of the center of the city right now, where reports started coming in within the last hour of 2 explosions in the departures hall there at the airport. Brussels is roughly about 6 hours ahead of the east coast here of the U.S., so this coming during the morning rush hour. Alex is back with us. And Alex, I can imagine, as I mentioned, this is during the morning rush hour. This is when many international flights from the U.S. might be arriving, and a lot of people might be heading out to other European destinations.
Absolutely. For example, there's a Brussels to Newark flight at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's in about an hour, but that's going to be one of the many flights that has been canceled this morning. We understand that all flights have been grounded leaving Brussels. There were a few that were able to land after the attacks happened, just after 8 o'clock in the morning. But otherwise, all flights going out have been canceled, and flights coming in have been diverted to other airports. Now, just before I lost the signal there, you were asking me about the mood in Brussels. And whether it's Brussels or France or other European capitals, everyone is keenly aware of the fact that the next attack is coming. But they do try to go about their normal lives. There is a sense of people being on edge and of nervousness and of inevitability, but people do try to continue resiliently their normal lives. But if you're in Paris or Brussels, you will see large numbers of police. Security forces have been stepped up by the thousands since those attacks in November at the main tourist sites and sensitive targets like Jewish facilities, Jewish schools, Jewish museums. You will see the army out in the street. So even if you're a tourist and you're going about having fun and taking pictures, lurking in the background, there is a heightened security presence that does remind you that these are countries, this is a continent that is still reeling from those November attacks and is still very much on edge.
And, you know, as we speak, there's a manhunt for a suspect linked to that terrorist attack. Can you tell us a little bit about that and about just kind of what the sense is of where things stand with that manhunt investigation?
Right. So everyone has been trumpeting the arrest of Salah Abdeslam, who was captured on Friday, but there is a very important suspect who is still out there. He was just named yesterday by the Belgian authorities. His name is Najim Lashraoui. He was going by a pseudonym. He's 24 years old, we understand it. He hasn't been seen since late last year, but his DNA was found in 2 safe houses linked to those ISIS attackers here in Belgium. And most importantly, in one of those safe houses, they found the traces of explosives, specifically an explosive called TATP. And that's the type of explosive that was used by the suicide bombers on November 13th in Brussels in their suicide vests. It's an extremely complex explosive to make in that it's extremely volatile, but it's very easy because the materials that are needed can be bought over the counter. And so there were traces of this explosive TATP found in this house where we know this suspect to have been because of his DNA. So the thinking is that he is intricate to the bomb-making process, if not the bomb maker himself, for not just the group of ISIS attackers who carried out the November attacks, who have now all been, who are now all dead or behind bars, but the broader network of ISIS followers here in Europe. And that was one of the most important things to come out of the arrest of Salah Abdeslam, is that we know that he had a strong support network. That's the reason he was able to evade capture for 4 months. But what the authorities are now saying is that that support network, that logistical network that not only kept him hidden, but was able to move him around and able to get more supplies, get more weapons, that is broader and bigger than they originally thought. And so, of course, that is also raising fears that even though someone like Salah Abdeslam can be captured and is now in prison, that more attacks are in the works.
Once again, this is an ABC News special report. We're having continuing coverage right now of double explosions taking place in the capital, Brussels, the international airport there, located about 6 miles northeast of the center of the city. And Alex, I should mention something. I've been to this airport. It is fairly small of an airport, and there are several flights to the U.S. that were scheduled for this morning to be taking off just about now. You have a Delta code share with KLM and Air France scheduled to leave at 10:10. You have a United Airlines flight to Newark at 11 a.m. and you have a Brussels Airlines flight to JFK at 10:30 in the morning. Brussels being 6 hours ahead of the east coast of the U.S. right now. Very technically and theoretically, many of those passengers might have been checking in at the time of this blast.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not Paris or London. This would be like a Philadelphia. It's a major European city, but just slightly smaller than the biggest cities in the U.S. or in Europe. And we have now actually gotten already, just in the time that we've spoken with you, that shows you how close the airport is to the city. We are already at the off-ramp to the airport. You can hear the sirens behind me, but we have been stopped here. They are not letting anyone take the road off towards the airport. The highway, sorry, I'm just going to let that car go past. The highway is almost at a standstill. Lots of traffic on this Brussels Ring Road, and a police car blocking the ramp. And you can probably hear a police officer behind me shouting at cars to keep going. I'm with a group of other reporters. Of course, we're all trying to reach the airport, but no one is being allowed through to the airport, to that departures hall where the explosions took place this morning, except for emergency services.
And of course, we do want to stress that we do not know the cause of these two explosions at the Brussels airport yet. So, that's the context that we're bringing you this report from. I do want to ask, Alex, when we lost you, you were talking a little bit about how Brussels is not, or the airport at least, is not on the highest alert as far as concerns around security, but was on the second highest, I believe is what you said. So I'm just curious, what would people coming to the airport this morning be experiencing in the form of security? Is it similar at all to the measures we have in place in the U.S. with TSA, or is it more lax than that? What would people be dealing with?
There would be very subtle differences compared to what you would have had, say, 6 months ago before the fears really grew. That's absolutely right. Across Belgium, you have the second highest level. It's called Alert Level 3. They haven't yet raised it to Alert Level 4. The French, the Belgians are very reluctant to scare the populations. They don't want to rile everyone up and make everyone nervous. And so what the measures that they put in place are simply beefed up security, both police and the military. And that's the main difference that you're seeing now in the past 4 months, is that it's not just the police who are out in the streets. It's not just the police who are at the airports, but you're also seeing soldiers. And so everywhere you go, whether it's the airport or downtown Brussels, downtown Paris, even around the Eiffel Tower, the Champs-Élysées, you see patrolling soldiers in their camouflage, holding their automatic weapons and getting ready, should something happen. Now, if you're somewhere else, like the Middle East, that's a very common sight. But to see this going on at some of Europe's major tourist sites is really quite startling. So what departing tourists and passengers would have seen this morning is an increased security in terms of the patrols around the airport. But other than that, the security, the TSA equivalent, if you will, would essentially, at least on the surface, have been what they would have experienced usually.
And once again, you're taking a look at some of the images that are coming in shortly after these explosions. You actually have passengers in an area that we're not familiar with. They're on the tarmac there at the Brussels International Airport. The airport was evacuated shortly after these dual explosions took place earlier this morning. We are told right now that all flights have been canceled for the day at the Brussels airport, and you can understand why that is the case. ABC's Alex Marquardt has just arrived at the airport. Alex, we hear the sirens. Describe to us some of the images, some of the smells that you're experiencing right now.
So we're a few hundred yards away, and I'll let these emergency cars go past. That was just two police SUVs that went screaming past. Got a quick glimpse of the folks inside. Looked well-equipped, heavily armed, going towards the airport. The emergency services, the police, the fire trucks are the only ones who are now being allowed towards the airport. We are on the main highway. It is essentially bumper-to-bumper standstill traffic because no one is being allowed to pull off to go to the airport. That's why most of the people would be coming out on this road at this time. But there's a series of cones that's been set up, and no one, especially not reporters, are being allowed towards the airport, even on foot. So we've got a lot of traffic, a lot of noise because of all the sirens and all the cars that are heading towards the airport. We heard them in downtown Brussels all the way out to the airport. So a lot of commotion this morning. Of course, a lot of questions. When there are two explosions that take place at a major European airport, of course, the first assumption is going to be that this is terrorism. We should remind our viewers that the Belgian authorities have not yet declared that. What they've said is that there were two explosions. There are wounded. They have confirmed that one person has been killed, but they have not given any higher numbers. There are other numbers floating out there for now. But the evacuation of the passengers from that departures hall is taking place. And in the meantime, emergency services are keeping everyone else away from the airport.
And Alex, for people that are just now tuning in and maybe just getting up to speed with this story, give us a little bit of the sense of the context and the timing of when this has just happened. This comes in the wake of the arrest of the suspect in the Paris attacks, Salah Abdeslam, and another manhunt is underway.
Well, for the past few days, Belgian and French authorities have essentially been patting themselves on the back for having captured Salah Abdeslam, who's known as the 8th Paris attacker. This is a 26-year-old French man who grew up in Belgium, who was the only survivor of those Paris attacks. Everyone else was either killed or killed themselves. And in the interrogation, one of the first revelations was that Abdeslam said he was supposed to kill himself that day, but decided not to. Whether he got cold feet, we don't know, but he said that he backed out. And so everyone has been focused on this, if you will, for the authorities, triumphant moment of taking him down and arresting him and trying to figure out what information can be gleaned from him. But it goes without saying that this is a coup, but he is not a pivotal figure in the ISIS organization. This is a guy who did not go to fight in Iraq and Syria. He was a soldier for ISIS. And so the fear now is that there are not only fighters, Europeans, of which there are thousands in Iraq and Syria who are coming back to carry out and plan attacks, but also homegrown jihadists, people like Salah Abdeslam, who are willing to take up arms and carry out attacks and wreak havoc. Now, the message coming from ISIS now is telling their fighters, don't just carry out big symbolic attacks like Paris, where they targeted very famous landmarks, strategic locations. They're saying, carry out attacks wherever you can, kill whoever you can. And so what intelligence officials expect to see in the coming months and years, really, are different types of attacks, sporadic attacks, anything that can cause any sort of disruption, anything that can cause any sort of fear. And so, of course, this is a country, these are countries, this is a continent that is still very much reeling from those Paris attacks, very afraid for the next attack, knowing that it could come soon. Of course, we don't know what has happened today, but that's the mood here, is that everyone is going to immediately assume that this is linked, if not directly, then certainly indirectly, to this broader mission of ISIS and other jihadists to carry out attacks in Europe.